There are timestamps down in the description box below in case you want to skip certain parts of the video to the parts where you find to be more interesting. And if you're new here, please click that subscribe button because it really does help me out to make more videos like this in case you like this type of content. Now with that being said, let's go ahead and get started talking about Guardians of the Galaxy versus the Suicide Squad. So the way that this video is going to work is that I created a post on Instagram asking people which movie do they prefer. Do they prefer Guardians of the Galaxy or do they prefer the Suicide Squad? And I asked them to see if they can give me any reasons why they choose one or the other and transform this into an in-depth video analysis. There is also going to be one comment from Facebook, but it does actually relate to the topic about Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm just going to include that at the very end of the video. Now with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with these Instagram comments. So this is the first comment I've received on Instagram, and it says, I adored the Suicide Squad, but Guardians is way too close to my heart, so I'd have to say that. There's not really much to say on this, it's just that you prefer one or the other. You have a different taste on Guardians of the Galaxy because it's filled with sci-fi and action, it's filled with characters that are a lot more fluffy and lighthearted, even though there's some dark dramatic moments that's going on with Peter Quill, but it's a more lighthearted movie. Suicide Squad, it's a lot more intense and gritty, and you do really like it, but when it comes to like these two movies, it can be apples and oranges. There are a few contrivances with Harley getting plot protection in the first half, so Guardians might be the better film. Though I haven't researched Guardians in a while to figure out the issues, but I honestly favor Suicide Squad a bit more as Gunn got to have more creative freedom in making whatever he wanted. And maybe that can be distracting for some people because James Gunn did announce that there are going to be characters that will die in the film, and that causes him to put in the risk of having characters no longer continue within the extended universe. So Harley Quinn could have the chance to die in this film, but spoiler alert, they're not really going to have the opportunity to kill her off because that would be way too big of a risk. And I do agree that James Gunn had a lot more creative freedom within this one than he did in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which is probably why I favor in the Suicide Squad more than Guardians of the Galaxy, because I don't really put that film on a high pedestal as a lot of other people do. I think in terms of the writing, there are some issues to be had within this film. I think some of the character connections could have been dealt with a little better. With the Suicide Squad, I was more so engaged within this movie and cared a lot more for the characters in that one than I did with Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think it's fair to say that the plot protection of Harley Quinn is a fair analysis on why Guardians of the Galaxy is a better film than the Suicide Squad, even though you would have James Gunn putting in the risk of saying, hey, characters are going to die in this movie whether you like it or not. And while yes, if you do have a problem with that, I can understand it, but Guardians of the Galaxy, or even Marvel films in general, they don't really take in the risk of losing characters either. The end of Guardians of the Galaxy, we could have had Groot just basically die and never return. But the thing is that he grew back into baby Groot and then teenage Groot, and now later on, he'll turn into an adult-sized Groot. I think it just depends on how much you're willing to throw away your belief within reality and throw in a little bit of realism to the Suicide Squad, even though that feels like it's really hard to do. But again, it's kind of like artistically subjective on how much you're willing to take in from this movie and how much you can't necessarily handle the fact of what's going on in there as well. Guardians was a movie that people disowned because people didn't think that a movie with a raccoon and a talking tree was going to be any good. Guardians succeeded and is better because it did something that Marvel hadn't ever done before, gave characters no one knew about a chance to shine. Now I know that you could say the same for Suicide Squad, however, I feel like Suicide Squad kind of piggybacked off Guardians because of that reason. You can see that Guardians was a big motivation for this movie as there were a lot of aspects from Guardians in this movie. So I believe that Guardians of the Galaxy is better because it was the first blockbuster superhero movie to really give a bunch of no-name heroes a chance to show who they are. Well, first of all, the thing is that the Suicide Squad isn't something that DC hasn't really done before. I mean, again, we had a very first Suicide Squad movie that they tried out at first, and it failed. But now they're trying to deliver what the first Suicide Squad movie could have been. Now, you could put in assertions that this movie is literally taking off from Guardians because it has some of the same stuff, like 80s movies and a lot of action and a lot of funny characters in here. But the problem is that they're two different films altogether, though. One is put in a sci-fi epic and talking about a whole different type of universe where it's literally at the hands of those characters. With Suicide Squad, they're just going on a mission that's probably bigger to handle than regular cops can actually do. I can see what this dude is talking about when he's saying that I think that this movie is just being inspired by Guardians of the Galaxy, therefore that movie is the one that should stand on the throne. But I feel like the Suicide Squad is more than just being another copy of Guardians of the Galaxy. It literally is trying to do its own thing. It just has some inspiration that's recycled from Guardians of the Galaxy. Without me spoiling anything, the movie is definitely one of James Gunn's best movies he ever made, with a lot of likable characters and with the music he chose for the movie and how bloody and gory this movie was, and the movie is very unpredictable. So those are my reasons. One thing I kind of want to say about this is that the movie isn't that unpredictable. It gets pretty cliche at the very end, because they do that route where they're like, this is the actual truth that you have never noticed before. These are the real people that are actually behind it. We've seen that kind of story before in other movies, and it's not that unique. It works with some of the emotions of the characters that are in the film, but it's like a last-minute thing that they decided to do where they're trying to draw out some emotions toward the characters, and while it kind of worked, it's nothing new, and it does get predictable what happens. But again, it is pretty much what you do prefer. Do you prefer the violence of a fun movie, or do you prefer fun space sci-fi action films? And clearly this dude really does prefer the side that's a lot more gritty and violent. Again, same song, second verse, more likable team, humor worked better, more consistent pacing, and it was fresh and unique for the time. And the same can be said about Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, some people prefer to have that fun space sci-fi action thriller that a lot of people haven't usually seen before within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Avengers were the closest ones to actually get into the realm of seeing something that's from space, or actually Thor was the first one to have something that was beyond the galaxy realm, but we never really gotten to understand or figure out what is it like to be on an actual different planet with different characters, different looking creatures, and what their interactions are like, and how do they work within their realm of species. It's no wonder why a lot of people would actually prefer Guardians of the Galaxy than the Suicide Squad. One person said, well, mainly because I haven't seen the Suicide Squad yet, so obviously he chose Guardians, but this one did chose Guardians of the Galaxy, and his reasons is because of the soundtrack. And for pure entertainment values, I think that does actually make sense why someone would pick Guardians of the Galaxy over the Suicide Squad, because if you are there for the entertainment, then you would want to have a good soundtrack and good music to listen to that really hits into your nostalgia preferences, or just a catchy song that you love to groove through. Can you actually get entertainment without really seeing much of a good soundtrack? You probably don't need it, and the Suicide Squad does provide like some amount of soundtracks in their film that do make the movie a lot more enjoyable. The opening sequence, I honestly prefer that one over any of the other opening sequences that are in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. But I think that when you are putting in a soundtrack inside a movie, it's easy to get persuaded by a movie just because you remember that song and you enjoy listening to that song while watching the movie. For me though, I think it's how you incorporate that song and make it work within the film. And when I listen to the music that is in the Suicide Squad, I feel like that their soundtrack works better because it works by representing the attitude that the characters are going through in the film and the way that the film is usually shot. When watching Guardians of the Galaxy, the music can work in there, but sometimes it's just thrown in because it's a good, catchy song. It works within one character, Peter Quill, but at other times it's like they want to throw in a catchy theme song because it's just catchy, and people from that genre who would like watching this movie just like that type of music. It's so much more funny, the action is much better, King Shark, gore, better cinematography / direction, better writing, better / more interesting characters, better human moments, better performances. There's a lot to be said in here. I don't think that the Suicide Squad has like better performances and better writing than Guardians of the Galaxy. They're both on like equal footing because they have good amounts of acting from each film. But in terms of like it being more funny and the better human moments and it's more gory, I would say that the Suicide Squad definitely nails it more than Guardians of the Galaxy did. The human moments that's in Guardians of the Galaxy, it didn't really nail it for me. I didn't really buy that the whole Guardians of the Galaxy group came in together as if they were truly friends. It seemed more like they were just bantering back and forth, having situations that were happening all the time. The movie focused more on these characters trying to accomplish the mission at hand rather than actually having a connection and a bond with each other. They tried to do that, at least with one scene, but it was at the end of the movie where they start to realize it. In the Suicide Squad, there are more characteristic moments where they felt human with each other, and each and individual characters had their moments. So yeah, I personally agree with what this person said, and I think the Suicide Squad wins better not only just by being purely entertaining, but by also carrying out more emotions through their human characters. For me, Guardians of the Galaxy, I love the music, the fun, and the action. The Suicide Squad isn't bad, but Guardians of the Galaxy with real heroes on a redemption arc is more my speed. That does make sense because in terms of creating a story, some people would probably debate that Guardians of the Galaxy does a better job because for an epic, you would want characters to go through a personal conflict and experience change within the way that they think and how they view the world. Guardians of the Galaxy not only provides that through entertainment, but it also does that with our characters bonding with one another. I don't feel like it does it that much because there are probably few little scenes where they do have that. They focus more on just telling jokes with each other and making 80s references rather than spending more time on that actual bond with each other and figure out the change that they're supposed to go through. The message that they're implicating in Guardians of the Galaxy is there, but there is a better way to execute that. And for me, the Suicide Squad kinda has that change and conflict with the characters a lot better. It doesn't really have that epic feeling because it's not put in a situation where the story needs to be epic like Guardians of the Galaxy was. But the Suicide Squad has these characters go through certain changes within their lives where they feel like that they're not alone and they have each other through all the terrible things that they're putting themselves into. I feel like that bond was actually there in a special way, and the comedy works within their bond. It wasn't just making references to past old things that we usually do, like Star-Lord just trying to make a name out of himself and also referencing Footloose a good bit. The connection between Ratcatcher and King Shark and also Ratcatcher and Bloodsport works within the comedy that they're presenting, but also through an emotional standpoint as well. It's both funny and heartfelt at the same time, and I think that's what Guardians of the Galaxy could have been and what it was trying to do. The Suicide Squad, in my eyes, did it better. And lastly, this is the comment that I received on my Facebook account. I don't think they need to be compared. Both great, but the Suicide Squad shows James Gunn evolving into a better director without the chains of a PG-13 rating. And I definitely agree with that. They don't need to be compared, but it is interesting to see why some people would prefer the Suicide Squad and why some people would prefer Guardians of the Galaxy. And it's mostly because of what does James Gunn usually do in order to create a great film. And in order to create a great film, I feel like that if James Gunn wants to go all out, give him the R rating. And I think that the Suicide Squad really shows the potential of what he can actually do when he does have that R rating. When he does go beyond the PG-13 one. He works good enough when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy when he's under restriction from a Disney movie. But with the Suicide Squad, he's able to do whatever he wants without any limits whatsoever. And I think when he fully embraces all of what he wants to do, the Suicide Squad really does show it. But in terms of creating just a good or great movie, some people wouldn't need that. Some people would probably prefer Guardians of the Galaxy. And for them, that's good enough. And I don't blame them for that. And now it's time to show you guys the voting poll. I put up a poll on Instagram asking people to vote for which movie do they prefer for the Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy. There were a total amount of 18 people who voted. And with one side carrying in 11 votes, Guardians of the Galaxy was the winner by getting a 61% and the Suicide Squad ending up with a 39%. So a lot more people on my Instagram account prefer Guardians of the Galaxy than the Suicide Squad. It doesn't mean that it's the actual correct thing that the majority of people around the universe prefer to watch. This is just what people who follow me on Instagram think. But what do you guys think about this? Do you prefer Guardians of the Galaxy or do you prefer the Suicide Squad? Put your thoughts down in the comment section below and let's have a conversation about it. And like this video if you agree with what I say, or dislike this video if you disagree with what I say. I don't mind the dislikes. So that is it I have for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video.